New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. What if you had a place to return to every day for peace, clarity, and connection? The New Thought Ministry of Prayer offers live morning and evening prayer, along with a growing library you can access anytime. This is a space for reflection, renewal, and real spiritual practice, rooted in the understanding that something greater is already alive within you. You are welcome here. Join us live or watch anytime. The New Thought Ministry of Prayer, part of the New Thought Media Network. Come, take a moment for what matters most.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, and this is the Inclusive Church. So happy you've joined us. If you want to say hello in the chat, that would be great, or depending on which platform you're on, the chat or the comments section. Always like to know who is out there. And this month on the Inclusive Church, we are talking about more young adults, please. What is it that we need to be thinking about, that we need to commit to? What are some of the challenges of inviting, engaging, and utilizing people who are younger than 45 years old or younger? And how do we close the gap between what often are pretty robust youth ministry programs for children and teenagers, and then there's this big drop-off of intentional engagement for people in their 20s, which then they're lost, so we don't have 30-year-olds. And then people in their 40s may start coming back in, but we've missed a whole generation often. And so that theme this month, More Young Adults Please, is where we will be focusing. Thanks, Anita. It's always glad to know that we're hanging out together, even though we're in different places and I was going to say can't see each other, but yes, I get it. You can see me. I just can't see you. And looks like we have some people on LinkedIn. Looks like we have some people on Facebook. Looks like we have Lenora on YouTube. So maybe Lenora and Anita will be chatting with each other behind the scenes. Who knows? So this is the second in the series around More Young Adults Please. And I have to smile, or it makes me smile every time I even say the word more young adults, please, because it reminds me that I am no longer a young adult and haven't been for a long time. So there's like a reality check there every time I say more young adults, please. But it is an issue, a challenge, an opportunity. I think of it as an opportunity. But most of the time, when people are asking me for ideas about how to do it, they are seeing it as a challenge that they must face. And so last week we just talked about overall the issue, and this episode we're going to focus in on the fact that one generation does not fit all. So I want us to just in our framework, I want us to think of that in two specific ways before I start getting into many or any details. One is that even if you have some group of people who are in the same age group, there's still going to be individual differences. And so, I will share with you some norms and some patterns, but your best source for what will work in your community are the people who are involved or the young adults who you are inviting in so that they can help shape what you prioritize, what you plan, and what you actually do to engage them and to create an environment that they want to be a part of. So, no matter what age group we're talking about, there will be differences. So, one size doesn't fit all in terms of the activities. For example, about maybe 3 years ago now, 2.5 to 3 years ago, I was in a conversation with a small team from a New Thought church, and their desire was for me or for someone to give them, like, here's the white paper, and here is the um, here are the 5 best practices and how you implement them. And even today, I'm going to share some best practice ideas, but a lot of the things that came up in our conversations, I noticed were not really a good match for their community, how they meet, when they meet, the message that they deliver. That if they didn't customize the list to the personality and the purpose and priorities in their community, that list was not going to be helpful for them. The second key piece before we dive into more details is that, and I'll probably say this more than once, it's really important to remember that when we say young adults and we're saying adults who are 45 years old and younger, that within that broad group, at a very minimum, you've got to separate out your 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and 40-year-olds at the minimum. So, you're going to be looking at certain things that might apply to all in that age range, but for ongoing conversation and engagement and communication, there will need to be some separation based on age group. So, hey, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson, so glad that you have joined us as well today. Always happy to see your name and your comments as we go through. So there's so many places I could start with this. Oh my gosh, there's so many places. So I've already given you the biggest mistake, and yes, I'll probably go back to that at the end as well, because we don't want it to keep being the biggest mistake. At least I don't want it to keep being the biggest mistake. So instead of just mistakes, let's talk about developmental differences between different age groups. And because those developmental differences, those different experiences, life experiences, obviously in every age group, you have some people who are the same age, but they're physically very different, or they have different educations, right? We've got all of that diversity always. But for this conversation today, I'm going to talk about some patterns, kind of generationally or decade by decade. And when you keep these things in mind, it really does minimize your ability to slip into treating everyone from the age of 20 to 45 in one thing, so as one group. So some of the questions that people who are in their 20s are asking about their own life, like how to live life. And that's what we're doing in our spiritual communities, right? We're helping people use spiritual principle and spiritual practice to navigate their lives and how they are able to have or build lives that they love. So some of the primary questions that people in their 20s are asking, they're asking, well, who am I really? Like, now I'm technically an adult. Now I'm not, or don't have to be run by my parents. I get to choose my own values. I get to really begin to design how I want to see my life unfold. So, this question of, well, who am I? And where do I belong in the scheme of this neighborhood, this country? What's my purpose for being? Now, not in this lofty way, but in a very practical way, right? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Or why do I want to be here? Right? As I'm growing my life. And so people in their early to mid 20s, especially, are asking that. And often, a certain percentage have a really clear and confident answer to that. But overall, it is what the life experience is during the 20s to begin to define where I belong and what my purpose might be. And because of that, that translates into different needs, right? So there's a need for us in our spiritual communities to help answer the question, what do these spiritual principles have to do with my identity? How I identify, or who I identify with, or what I identify with. This age group is a majority are beginning to form the friendships that will sustain them over a long period of time. A lot of people who are in our communities who are teens or children, yes, my friendships are with people I've gone to school with, or my friendships are with other family members, many of whom, I didn't actually choose. It's just by circumstance that I went to the same school for 7 years, or was in the same school district for 7 years, and had the same people in my classes. And we got to know each other, and I have good friends. But it's in our 20s where we start really beginning to meet people we might not otherwise have met because of where we work or where we worship, or because we begin to travel more and we're deciding where to go. And so we meet different people because we're having a more individualized experience and a more individually directed experience. So in our 20s is that time where we're forging our own identity. We're beginning to create the standards for and or meet new people who become friends. It is a critical time for career guidance or employment. What do I really want to do? Oh, I never thought about this so much. I just was going to school because that's what was expected of me. And now I can't get a job in what I majored in, or I didn't go to college and I've been developing these skills, maybe trade or vocational skills, maybe customer service and or sales skills, but I don't want to do it exactly like what I'm doing now at 25. So where can this lead me? Right? Guidance for how do I build a career or long-term revenue generation through the work or the service that I give into the world. A big focus for many people in this age group under 30 is dating or identifying and forming relationships, primary relationships. And in current time, in the 21st century, a big focus, a much bigger focus than before, at least, on mental wellness and balance and spiritual practices, even though every year when people are surveyed, more and more people are identifying as spiritual, not religious. More and more people are saying they don't have a traditional church home, but they are very serious about the spiritual connection they have with the source of life or with how they live their own lives. These are all opportunities for our New Thought spiritual communities because there's so much alignment, right? There's so much alignment with what we teach, how to identify yourself with spirit, that spirit and I are one, that these principles that we teach and these practices that we do together or individually are so perfectly aligned with identifying who am I really and what kind of life do I want to create? What kind of relationships, not just romantic relationships, but what kind of relationships do I want to create? And who do I need to be in those kinds of relationships? So we have so much to offer in our New Thought practical spirituality, and we have tools and resources. And so, if we want to really reach people who are in their 20s, it seems that what works for so many churches or ministries or communities is are things like more informal gatherings. This is not a group that is likely to show up on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. or into a structured church service. But at the same time, this group is very, very motivated for spiritual experiences. This is an age group where a large percentage are very interested in engaging in community service, making a positive difference in the world. So group activities or activities not just with people in their age group, but activities where they can participate in providing some service, social service needs to fulfill social service needs in the community are things that they will very often sign up for. And yes, we need to step into 2026 technology so that we can provide digitally based engagement, whether that is individual for individual learning and support or group learning and support. And interestingly enough, this is a group that is very motivated to be leaders, and that may mean we have to explore, what does leadership mean to you and look like to you? Because what I've heard, even just in April, I was at a convention. I was talking to some people who were in their late 20s and early 30s, and they were like rolling their eyes, appropriately so, because they were sharing with me that they had all these ideas and they were willing to lead the activity or help facilitate the process. And they had received continuous messages over the previous 2 years that basically they weren't old enough, they didn't have enough life experience to lead anybody on anything, and they were feeling really frustrated by it. So if you have young people and especially if it's something where you're trying to build in spiritual understanding or depth, to meet them where they are, they've got to be involved in helping to define the topics and the structure. That's leadership. And then you don't come in and have a minister or a practitioner or a unity chaplain just come in and take over. You create partnerships. So they are learning the principles and how to apply them with some guidance, but they are involved every step of the way and excited about being respected for the ways they can provide leadership rather than being told you're not old enough yet or you're not experienced enough yet. We cannot put you in a leadership role. So those are things that really do help in terms of thinking about how you might engage as well as attract your young adults who are 30 and under. So what about the folks who are in their 30s? Let's talk about the main question. I looked at 7 different reports and studies, and the question that was in all of them about this age group was that people in this age group are asking, how do I build a meaningful life? I've been working 10 years or 15 years. I've kind of got my rhythm going. I'm figuring that out, but I don't really love it, or I don't feel I'm contributing as much as I can. How do I build a life that is meaningful to me and makes a contribution to the world? It's a pretty common question, maybe not worded exactly that way, but worded in a way that reveals it is a time for a search for meaning. A lot of the things that are going on for folks in their 30s in general is a large percentage are experiencing marriage. And that doesn't mean they're just getting married, but they may have gotten married when they were in their early 20s or mid 20s. And now in their 30s, it's like, oh, this is what this thing called marriage is all about. There also has been a trend over the last 30 years of people waiting to marry when they are older. So there is a chunk of people who are in their 30s who have never been married or who are embarking on their first marriage. And so, but the topic of these lifelong commitments that I'm making to a primary partner and this age group, of course, usually is the majority of them are into parenting in a serious way. This is where people do start beginning to come back into spiritual community if they have children who are school age, because they are beginning to want to instill certain values into their children so that their children are not just driven by peer pressure or what the other kids they go to school with are believing and or doing. Career advancement becomes important. Where am I going to be in 10 years? Where am I going to be in 20 years? Time management, juggling my life, the relationships that I'm involved in, work or career, church or spiritual development, and all the things I want to do. I want to go on vacation. I want to travel all over the world. I have a mismatch between the availability of ideas and the availability of time and maybe the availability of money. So all of that's going on for people in their 30s. And so it becomes interesting and important for us in our spiritual communities to think, how do the values we teach, how are the principles that we believe in, how are the classes that we offer and the activities we schedule, how are these things meeting the needs and the priorities of someone who is in their 30s? If everybody who is planning things and prioritizing activities and courses is in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, how are you finding out what would truly interest and have a positive impact for that 35 or 36-year-old who is definitely an adult, has been working, may have children, and have a busy life? What do they need? What do they need to be able to quote Ernest Holmes and understand how that applies to what is important to them right now? Are you having book studies or book discussion groups about books that are of relevance to this age group? And are you setting up your book study group where people have access to and you're promoting the use of the ebook or the audible book so that there is a pattern? A slight distraction or digression, even though it is related. I recently completed a book that I love and highly recommend, Sky Full of Elephants. And as I was reading the book and I was thinking about how have I want to have some real conversations about this with other people, and especially people who are 20 to 30 years younger than I am, because of I want to hear what their perception is. And I also want to hear what they are learning about, because I'm reading it with all the things that happened in the 60s and 70s, especially in mind. And I'm seeing all these connections. But if someone is 25 they may not see those same connections, but I bet they will see some different ones in different parts of the book. And so I was thinking, I was so excited. Yes, got to have some conversations about this later this year. I got to find, get some folks to read it. And I thought, oh, well, I don't want to make it like it's a class, right? Where you must learn and read and memorize. How can I shape it? And what are the questions, like the prompts for a discussion that would make sense across generations, that would motivate people who are my age, but also motivate people who are not my age to see that this book has value for them. And then, of course, because it's me, I was also entertaining the question, and how can I really bring forth the spiritual message that I see so clearly, but others may or may not recognize it? So we have to ask ourselves the questions again if we're trying to attract the folks who are in their 30s. Some of the things to keep in mind. Did we plan that in a way that's family friendly? Do they need childcare in order to be available, in order to participate? What time of day am I scheduling it? This is someone who, is working, and they may be working 45 to 60 hours a week. So if that were me, how would I build it into my schedule? Or even better, let me go find 5 or 6 people that describes and ask them what would be something they would put on their calendar because they felt it was so important. Also, just having the spiritual or spiritually based conversation about how you are raising your children, and modeling, demonstrating, as well as passing on spiritual values. And how do you do that? Or what are other people doing that you might be able to learn from as well? And this group wants to volunteer often, but again, they have the biggest, they have um, a large, maybe not the biggest, but they have a large commitment, right? They're being pulled between raising children, solidifying their primary relationships, and striving for success at work, let alone personal and spiritual development. So, what kinds of volunteer opportunities can you offer that would actually support all of that? And maybe, there are a lot of possible ideas, but maybe you get input from the folks who you have access to define them. um, I'm aware of a group that I thought this turned out to be such a great project for their church. They had a lot of people who were in their, a lot. They had a couple dozen people who were in their late 30s and early 40s. And they wanted to volunteer, but they had all these conflicting things. And someone suggested that they volunteer with a program, local nonprofit organization that was bringing parents of school age children, K-8, school age children, and the conversation they were hosting, the nonprofit was hosting, was about parenting. And they wanted people from different religious and spiritual backgrounds. So they were folding that in as well. So someone at the church had recommended they wanted to just get 4 people who would participate, and they didn't have to be experts on parenting like psychologists or sociologists or right they that or educators. They wanted, quote unquote, they said, we want real people who are raising kids and come together to support one another and to talk about best practices. But this was a nonprofit and they had very limited funds. And so they were looking for 2 things. In addition to participants, they were looking for locations around the town that would host them so that people wouldn't have to drive an hour and a half, depending on where they live. So they were looking for 4 locations around town and that would host these conversations, and they were looking for people who would kind of take care of some of the administrative stuff, take attendance, bring food, or make sure there was a schedule for people to bring food, that kind of stuff. And so someone at the church said, I want to go to this, but this also might be something we can volunteer. Can we use the church as one of the locations? And if there are 4 of us who agree to be the kind of team leads on this, to make sure that every time there's a meeting, it's scheduled, we're there to lock and unlock, we're there to provide food or make sure food is provided, et cetera, et cetera. So they were doing volunteer leadership, and they got to participate in the program, and that was worth them putting it on their calendar. It was something that was important to them, and they made sure that there was a minister or a chaplain who participated, who was not in the age group but participated to help them bring forward what their new thought message was. And so they ended up getting some coaching around that, and they became stronger and more articulate about who we are and what we do in New Thought. It was a win, 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 win. And they started out doing it just for one cycle, which I believe was 8 weeks. And everybody who participated raved about it. And so, 2 years later now, it has become a staple, a thing that people in that age group at that church take the lead on and participate in. And the last time I checked in with them, which was last year, so 8 months or so ago, they had continued to do it. Instead of just the first 4 people who raised their hand and volunteered, they had also recruited people to become a part of their church, people who had attended some of the sessions were some of them, but they had a team of 10 who were committed to this ongoing initiative so that those 4 didn't get burned out and they didn't have to be at every one, and they rotated it. It was beautiful, but it was kind of off the wall, like in terms of unexpected, that a member of that age group brought forward, and then we figured out how to make it work. So family-friendly programming, parenting circles are programs that integrate family, parenting, and spiritual principle, and flexible volunteering. Those are the things that I really want you to keep in mind. And last but not least, that group that is in their 40s, I'm saying 41 to 45, but in their 40s, especially if at your church everybody is, in their 70s or 65 and older. So the key question that comes up is, wait a minute, okay, I've been an adult for 20 years now, and wait, is this all? Now, that's not everybody who's in this age group, But this age group is the age group where that begins to come up a lot. Like, what do I have to show for what I've done for the last 20 years since I graduated from high school? What do I really believe is important for me now? Because what I have, yeah, it's good, but is this all I'm going to experience? Like more of this for the next 40 years? So it's not always a question that comes from a feeling of failure or disappointment. In fact, it comes up as much, if not more, from people who have achieved a lot, who have done really well, and are realizing, oh, yeah, I've gotten here. I have arrived here and it's good, but what's next? Is there more? And so the needs at that level or at that stage become, you know, ooh, I have something to share with others. Yes, I want to be a leader, not just for prestige, but to make a difference. What is the legacy that, if I continue on this path, what legacy am I leaving for my children or for others 10 years from now or 20 years from now? What will I have done that is worthy of people going, yes, you changed my life, or you inspired me? So folks who are in their 40s are, I don't think of the common societal reference to, oh, they're having a midlife crisis. In our spiritual communities, our adults who are in their 40s are at a stage of redefining who they are and who they want to become. This also is the age group that more and more are having to care for or choosing to care for aging parents while they still have children they are raising or influencing. And this is the group that is very much engaged in their careers, but they're looking like for their life overall, where do I go next? So some of the things you might want to keep in mind are, this is a age group that's really primed for leadership development, leadership positions, yes, in your church, but also are you helping to develop them? Are you giving them or coaching them on the skills that they can use even outside of your church or your spiritual community? And they have 20 plus years of being an adult. So how can you put them in front of others and give them opportunities? Now, I know in my home spiritual community, this required a lot of intentional education about, like, someone may be a leader at work and they know how to make decisions, but they don't necessarily know how to communicate the decisions or the options from a spiritual viewpoint. And so you may need to do some type of support, coaching, or guidance that help people use the skills they may have developed at work or being the head of a family, and show them how this is a representation of certain principles or certain practices that can enhance that. And so with your 40-year-olds, you really do want to be thinking about how you take them to the next level of integrating spiritual principle and truth with leadership at home, at work, or at your church. So, final reminder, or another reminder, the biggest mistake that you will make is if you say, oh, we have a young adult ministry, and someone asks you, what age group is that? And you're like 20 to 45 or 20 to 40 or 25 to 45 or anybody under the age of 40. No, you can do it, but it will be more difficult for you to actually achieve your goal of having young adults seen, recognized, valued, engaged. And that's what we ultimately want. So I hope these ideas and this information has helped you think a little bit more about what you might do in your spiritual community to invite and include people from the different decades within this large, broad category that we call young adults. This entire month, we're focusing on more young adults, please. And so as we are doing that, we're looking at different topics each week. And I hope that you will join me for the remaining 2 weeks. Next week, I'm going to focus on moving from just having our young adults attend a Sunday service to actually what are some things that will communicate and know they're really a valuable part of this community, that this community is one, this church is a church that they are able to really call their own. And yes, Lenora, the big listen is to listen to the different generations and to remember that even within a generational group, there's individuation that you've got to talk to the folks as you're bringing them in if you want to be sure that you are reaching them with opportunities that meet their needs. So that's it for this week on the Inclusive Church. My name is Tracy Brown. I hope you'll join me next week and every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network. Bye for now.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.